I could barely process what I was seeing when I pushed open the side door to my garage. Standing right there like she owned the place was Karen Matthews, the notorious HOA president, digging through my paint supplies with the intensity of a detective on a caffeine binge. Her perfectly highlighted bob haircut whipped around as she spun to face me, phone already raised, filming like she had just uncovered a major scandal. "This is a crime scene," she screeched, eyes bulging with righteous indignation. "Paint fumes are forbidden in this neighborhood. I've documented everything." My stomach dropped as I took in the chaos around her. The main garage door had been pried open at the bottom. Several paint cans I had meticulously arranged were now tipped over, dripping primer into spreading pools on the concrete floor. Karen, still mid-rant, didn't even blink when she noticed me. Instead, she shoved her phone closer to my face, keeping the camera rolling. "You violate Section 12, Paragraph 9 of the Community Bylaws Environmental Hazards, Toxic Emissions," she barked. "I'm done tolerating your little artistic stunt." My patience snapped. I pulled out my own phone and hit record. This was beyond absurd. Even for Karen, this was a new level of madness. She had broken into my garage. This wasn't an HOA request. This was criminal. "Karen, you forced your way into my garage," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the adrenaline pulsing through me. "You need to leave. Right now. I don't need authorization to investigate a community threat," she retorted, dramatically pointing at my half-refurbished antique dresser as if it were a bomb. "This entire setup is unauthorized." I inhaled slowly, fighting to stay calm. Honestly, this confrontation had been brewing for months, ever since I started restoring old furniture on weekends. Working with my hands had always grounded me. After years stuck behind a desk at the architecture firm, I craved something tangible, something creative. 3 months ago, I began picking up discarded pieces and transforming them with careful sanding, painting, and refinishing. And I followed every HOA rule. Garage door closed. Low odor, water-based paints, proper ventilation, spotless cleanup. Most neighbors barely noticed I was doing anything. A few even complimented the restored bench I placed out front, a perfect match to the approved HOA color palette. But Karen, who lived 4 houses down, treated my hobby like a personal attack on her authority. That IT started with slow drive-bys. She would creep past my house in her spotless white SUV during weekend afternoons, glaring at my garage like she expected to see a smuggling operation. Then came her passive-aggressive comments at HOA meetings. "Some residents seem to believe they can run commercial businesses out of their garages," she announced loudly one evening, looking straight at me. "Sunny Pines is a residential community, not a manufacturing site." I calmly explained it was just a hobby, fully within guidelines. The board nodded, and I thought that was that. But Karen wasn't letting it go. A week later, I found the first of many warning letters on official HOA letterhead, accusing me of producing strong, hazardous chemical odors. When I spoke to my neighbors, none of them had smelled anything. None had complained. Then she escalated to taking pictures. I'd spot her on the sidewalk, phone pointed at my garage, snapping what she called ongoing evidence of violations. One Saturday, she even dragged another board member to witness the fumes. The poor woman couldn't smell a thing and apologized before hurrying away. From there, things got even more bizarre. Karen began citing obscure odor regulations that didn't appear anywhere in the HOA rulebook. I checked every page twice. Unsatisfied, I asked Michael, my retired lawyer neighbor, to take a look. "She's inventing rules again," he told me over the fence one evening. "Last year, she tried to fine the Johnsons for excessive cooking smells because they had weekly barbecues. The board eventually shut her down, but she made their lives miserable in the meantime. After 2 exhausting months of harassment, I formally requested an HOA inspection. Greg, the compliance officer, a level-headed guy, came by while I was refinishing a coffee table. He examined my ventilation setup, tools, and paint supplies, then shrugged. "Everything here is completely compliant," he said, signing off. "Honestly, you're being more careful than required. I'll include that in my report." I naively thought Greg's approval would end Karen's crusade. Instead, it only seemed to pour gasoline on her fury. The warning letters doubled, then tripled. She even began calling my workplace, leaving frantic messages about urgent violations. At first, my boss laughed, but after the 10th voicemail, it became humiliating. Then came that Thursday evening. Normally, I worked late, but a client canceled, and I got home at 5:30 instead of 7 o'clock. As I turned onto my street, I spotted Karen's white SUV idling a few houses down. Something felt off. When I pulled into my driveway, I noticed the garage door corner bent upward as if forced open. A chill ran through me. I rushed to the side door, and that's where I found her standing in the middle of my garage like she was executing a federal raid, filming what she called criminal behavior. Now, facing each other amid the mess she caused, Karen seemed to realize she might have gone too far, but instead of backing down, she escalated. As HOA President, I have emergency authority to inspect any property that presents a clear threat to the community, she proclaimed, adopting a false official tone. These paint fumes could be dangerous, she insisted. Mrs. Wilson down the street has asthma. Have you ever considered that? There is no such thing as emergency authority in our bylaws, I replied firmly. You broke into my property. That's trespassing and breaking and entering. I'm calling the police. Her expression faltered at the word police, but she regained her composure quickly. Go ahead, she scoffed. They'll understand that I was protecting our community standards, our property values. I stepped outside to make the call, partly to keep her in my line of sight, and partly because I needed a second to get a grip on my nerves. As I dialed 911, I noticed several neighbors stepping out of their houses, watching the situation unfold. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher asked. I'd like to report a break-in, I said steadily. I came home to find the president of my HOA inside my garage. She forced open my garage door and refuses to leave. While waiting for the officers, I walked over to my next-door neighbor, Lisa, who stood on her driveway looking uneasy. Did you see anything? I asked. Lisa nodded slowly. I saw her trying to lift your garage door about 20 minutes ago. I thought maybe you asked her to check something while you were at work. Should I have called you? It's not your fault, I assured her. But would you be willing to tell the police what you saw? She agreed without hesitation. So did Robert from across the street, who had witnessed Karen parking her SUV down the road and approaching my house carrying what he described as a metal tool. I suddenly remembered my doorbell camera. Pulling up the footage on my phone, I found exactly what I expected. Clear video of Karen marching up my driveway holding a garden trowel and wedging it under the garage door to pry it open. As we waited, something surprising happened. More neighbors started gathering, and they began sharing their own run-ins with Karen's inspections. She climbed over my fence last summer to measure my garden gnomes, said elderly Mrs. Peterson claimed they were 2 inches taller than regulation. She used a ladder to peek over my privacy fence to see if my pool chemicals were the right brand, added Dan from 2 houses down. And she tried to come into my sunroom during a dinner party because she thought my new curtains were the wrong shade of beige. Lisa chimed in. A clear pattern emerged, one everyone had experienced, but never openly discussed until now. By the time the police cruiser rolled up 15 minutes later, half the neighborhood was standing outside. 2 officers stepped out, looking puzzled by the crowd. I walked over, explained everything, and showed them the doorbell footage. They then interviewed Lisa and Robert, who confirmed their accounts. Finally, the officers asked to speak with Karen. She was still inside my garage, frantically tapping on her phone as if drafting a legal argument. When they approached her, she launched into her rehearsed speech about fulfilling her HOA responsibilities and safeguarding community welfare. Ma'am, did you have permission to enter this property? The female officer asked bluntly. I don't need permission, Karen said confidently. I'm the HOA president. Actually, you do need permission, the officer corrected her. Without it, this qualifies as trespassing and breaking and entering. But the paint fumes. Karen sputtered, pointing dramatically toward my workbench. They're illegal. The male officer examined my supplies. Sir, what kind of paint are you using? I showed him my cans water-based, low-vac, HOA-approved paints. I only work with the door open for ventilation, and only during allowed hours, I explained. He nodded. Everything looks compliant. Karen's face flushed a deep crimson. You don't understand. He's breaking the rules. My rules. And in that moment, her elaborate fought of authority completely collapsed. The officers shared a look, and the female officer reached for her handcuffs. Ma'am, I'm placing you under arrest for breaking and entering, trespassing, and property damage, she said calmly. You have the right to remain silent. Karen's jaw dropped as the cuffs clicked shut. This is absurd. I'm calling my attorney. Paint laws are real. They're real. As she was escorted toward the patrol car, the gathered neighbors watched, stunned. Karen shrieked about property values and dangerous fumes all the way down the driveway. 2 days later, I received a certified letter from the HOA board. Karen had been suspended immediately, pending a formal vote for removal. The interim president, Janet, a reasonable, even-tempered board member, personally apologized and assured me the HOA would cover all property damage. The legal fallout was swift. Karen was charged with criminal trespassing, breaking and entering, and property destruction. Because she used a tool to force her way inside, the charges were elevated to felony status. During her arraignment, Karen was outraged to learn she faced up to 2 years in prison and $8,000 in fines. Her lawyer negotiated a plea deal, 12 months probation, a $3,000 fine, mandatory community service, and a restraining order keeping her at least 100 feet from my property. She was also required to pay for the garage door repairs and replace the paint she'd ruined. When the verdict was read, her famously perfect composure shattered. But I was right. She wailed in court, disbelief twisting her voice. The paint smells are illegal. I'm the president, I make the rules. Her attorney hurried her out as she continued ranting about protecting the community standards.